In 2004, in the sleepy Chicago suburb of Aurora, Illinois, Amy Pitson would give birth to her firstborn son. After some deliberation, she and her husband James would name the boy Timothy. The first 6 years of the boy's life were happy and uneventful, and we have every reason to believe that he was loved and well looked after by his two young parents. He had an extensive collection of relatives that he visited regularly, who cared for the boy just as much as his own parents did. But Timothy and his family were headed towards a tragedy that would confound and puzzle all that became familiar with it, a mystery that would remain unsolved even to this day. On the morning of May 11, 2011, James Pitson woke up, made breakfast for himself and his son, and then drove the boy to his kindergarten class over at Greenman Elementary School on West Galena Boulevard before he headed to work. But for some reason, a short while later, just after 8 a.m., Amy Pitson arrived at the school, telling a member of the teaching staff that there was a family emergency and that she needed to take Timothy out of the school for the day. Timothy's kindergarten teacher naturally obliged his mother, letting the young boy out of class to accompany her wherever she was headed, after wishing her the best with whatever emergency she was dealing with. However, instead of dealing with this apparent family emergency, Amy Pitson's whereabouts are unknown until around 10 a.m. that same morning, when she arrived at a vehicle repair shop in Aurora. A friendly employee of the shop then drove Pitson and her son over to the nearby Brookfield Zoo, where the pair then spent the remainder of the morning and the early afternoon relaxing and exploring the various animal exhibits that were on display there. At around 3 p.m., Amy and her son arrived back at the vehicle repair shop, collecting her car before driving over to the Key Lime Cove Resort in the small town of Gurnee, over in Lake County, which is known for its large water park, as well as being a subsidiary of Six Flags. After taking Timothy around the water park, Amy and her son spent the night at the resort, leaving early the next morning before driving over state lines to Wisconsin. Here they checked into the Kalahari Resort in the Wisconsin Dells at around 10 a.m., both being recorded on CCTV cameras. But since then, neither hide nor hair of Timothy Pitson had been seen anywhere. For all intents and purposes, the young man had vanished into thin air. Around lunchtime the following day, on May 13th, Amy Pitson made a series of phone calls to some of her relatives, including her brother-in-law and her mother. She assured them that they were not to worry, how she and Timothy were both safe and well and that neither of them were in any danger. These relatives would later confirm that Timothy was indeed present with his mother at the time of these calls, since he could be heard in the background complaining that he was hungry. In the investigation that followed, cell phone records showed that the calls were made from an area close to Sterling in Vernon County, Wisconsin, and that the pair were apparently on the move again via Route 40. Yet contrary to what one might expect, Amy Pitson did not contact her husband, the one person you might assume that she would call to inform of her and her son's whereabouts. James had been frantic with worry ever since the evening of May 11th, when he had returned home to find the house empty and had subsequently heard the news that his wife had taken Timothy out of school. On the evening of May 13th, Amy Pitson was recorded on the security cameras of a Winnebago Family Dollar store. She was alone when she purchased a notebook, some stationery, and some envelopes. She was still all on her own when she was sighted in a branch of Sullivan's Food, also in Winnebago, Wisconsin, where she apparently visited the pharmacy counter before swiftly leaving. She was not spotted again until just past 11 that night, when she had apparently returned to Illinois, checking into a room, the Rockford Inn in the city of Rockford. The following day, in the early afternoon of May 14th, a member of the housekeeping staff at the inn visited the room that Amy Pitson was staying in, with the intention of cleaning the room. There was no Do Not Disturb sign present on the door handle, and when the housekeeper knocked, there was no reply from inside the room. So against her better judgment, she unlocked the room and walked inside. There, to her absolute horror, she found Amy Pitson lying face up on sheets that were soaked with blood. Pitson had taken an overdose of powerful antihistamines before slashing her own wrists. She had also apparently left a note on a nearby dresser, stating that she was well and truly sorry for the mess that she had caused, but that Timothy would never be found. However, the note was quick to reassure those that read it that Timothy was in fact safe, with people who would care for him, but that it would be pointless to look for him since his new guardians had hidden him away and would never give him up. After being called, police quickly arrived on the scene to shut off the hotel room for forensic examination. They located the knife that Amy Pitson had taken her own life with and, upon close inspection of her car, found traces of what appeared to be an alarming amount of her son's blood. Yet upon analysis, only Amy's blood was found to be on the knife found at the scene. To the relief of investigators, close relatives of the Pitsons revealed that in the run-up to Timothy's disappearance, he had suffered a rather large nosebleed in the car, and this is why so many trace particles could be found inside the vehicle. Amy Pitson's cell phone was nowhere to be found at the scene of her death, but it was later found in a grassy verge on the edge of Route 78, evidently tossed out the window of her moving vehicle as she returned to Illinois. But analysis of her cell records shed no further light on what she had done nor why she had done it, and there were no clues regarding her son's whereabouts to be found. Furthermore, the analysis of Amy's vehicle revealed that at some point she had been parked in a grassy area. There were traces of clay embedded in the vehicle's tires, which investigators surmised had come from a place with a stream or river nearby. Thus, it is highly possible that Amy had driven into a rural area, possibly off-road, in order to hand Timothy over to his new keepers. Pitson has since made it abundantly clear that he believes his son is still very much alive. In August of 2018, the since-canceled law enforcement TV show Live PD showed their viewers some digitally generated age progression images showing what Timothy might look like at age 13. The guest on that episode of the show was Angeline Hartman of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, who urged members of the public to come forward with any and all information that may help police locate Timothy. But none of the calls that were made as a result came to anything at all. However, less than a year later, calls were made to police in northern Kentucky that brought a phenomenal amount of hope to those who wished for Timothy's return, but also revealed an unfathomable mystery and an unimaginable evil. On the 3rd of April 2019, citizens in the city of Newport called local police to inform them that a teenage boy was wandering in nearby streets, apparently in a daze, after having run across a bridge on the Ohio River. Police soon located the young man, who was shaken, distraught, and exhausted, and who required a great deal of consoling before he could even bring himself to speak. Police asked the teenager for his name, and his reply shook them to their core. "Timothy," he stammered. "Timothy Pitson." The boy was rushed to Louisville, Kentucky's largest city, where he was interviewed by detectives regarding his apparent disappearance 8 years previously. He said he couldn't remember a thing, that the most he could recall was escaping a house in neighboring Ohio before running across the river bridge. But DNA tests would reveal something that was devastatingly disappointing to James Pitson, who was indescribably overjoyed at the sudden breakthrough in the case. The boy was not Timothy Pitson. The entire story was an intricate lie fabricated by then 23-year-old Brian Michael Rennie. Rennie had been released from Belmont Correctional Institution in Ohio just shy of a month prior to his terrible claims. He had served just 14 months on charges of burglary and vandalism, resulting from acts committed in Medina County. Sergeant Bill Rowley, a spokesman for Aurora Police, later released a statement saying that, "Although we are disappointed that this turned out to be a hoax, we remain diligent in our search for Timothy, as our missing persons case remains unsolved." One cannot possibly imagine what would have possessed Brian Michael Rennie to tell such a heinous and evil lie. It is possible that he had seen an episode of Live PD or somehow heard of Timothy's disappearance whilst incarcerated and wished to hit back at a world that he viewed with what must have been a remarkable degree of contempt. But either way, Timothy Pitson remains missing to this day, and there have been no sightings of the boy since the day he suddenly disappeared at the hands of his mother. However, no bodies have been found, not even a drop of blood that wasn't easily explainable. So, it is entirely possible that he is still out there, somewhere in the United States, just waiting to be found.
Hey friends, thanks so much for watching. Just a quick heads up, I release new videos every second Tuesday at 7 p.m. EST. Also check out my main channel, Let's Read, where you can hear longer compilations of interesting, scary stories just like these. And if you prefer audio only, feel free to check out the Let's Read podcast, located anywhere you listen to podcasts, all linked in the description below. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you in the next one.